Hi everyone, here's the second part of the ramp buggy construction from GTA 5. In the last part we welded and reinforced buggy frame in places. By the way, it's about 520 centimeters long. In this part we'll fully make the suspension, the wide wheels, and the steering gear. Started with the rear levers, they'll be made of 3mm shaped tube. Their design will be the same as in the game. We need to make the right and the left levers. The rings for the silent block should be welded at the ends of the lever. I made them out of a thick-walled pipe of a suitable diameter. The rings need to be adjusted on the lathe bit and the inner surface must be sharpened. Now we can weld them in their place. I took silent blocks for the levers from the rear rail of Renault Logan. The fixators for the levers will be made of a 10mm plate. Everything is made conservatively loaded, in case I'd like to put some powerful engine such as V8 in it. I made a small recess in the slab for a better joint. I put the fixators together to level the seats. In total we need 8 pieces for the rear suspension. Now we can put it all together and weld it to the subframe from the same shaped tube. The subframe from the tube will be integrated into the frame and reinforced with struts, but only after the platforms for the swivel members will be welded to the levers. I'll take them from the Moskvich donor that once was supposed for Quadra, and in order it simply won't be wasted I decided to use it for the ramp. We need to remove all the excess from the member. The slab should be welded on the down grade to compensate bending of fixation holes on the member. I immediately drilled holes in the slab and screwed it to the member. Using a straight edge, I set the angle and welded it to the lever. The same thing should be done at the other side. The slabs will be strengthened with stiffening plates. Then the entire structure was welded to the frame. We need to determine the wheel location from the beginning. It'll be clearly in the center of the arch. Everything is fine and it's possible to strengthen the subframe attachment to the frame. It was supposed that the racks would be used also from the donor, but after installation on the standard member mounts it became clear that they wouldn't be able to work correctly here. Since the lever goes parallel to the frame now it'll simply break during the suspension performance. It should be placed behind and everything will work well, but then it's already possible to use the rear shock absorbers and the spring will stand in this place. It needs a cup that I cut from the old stand. The upper spring support will be welded from pipes and a cup will be welded to it too. We need to check at what level the suspension will stand with these springs. It turned out low as soon as the buggy will still sag when the engine will be installed. We decided to lift the suspension by lowering back shock absorber tower by 12 centimeters. Now I think it's fine. Further, we need to weld the fixators for the shock absorber to the levers. The shock strut piston will be inserted into the bracket from above. All the construction will be amplified after the engine installation, as the final suspension position will be visible under the loading. Here comes the front suspension. It'll be a standard 2-lever one. Levers will be made of pipes by means of the pipe bender. The front suspension is supposed to easily withstand 2 tons, otherwise buggy won't be able to overturn cars. I bent blanks for the levers and cut out slabs for the swivel joints fastening. Then we welded the lower levers. We cut the tubes for silent block and reduced their diameter a little. I lost aluminum inserts, so I'm going to use unsuitable silent blocks instead of them. The fixators for the levers will be sawn from the channel. We'll also use an integrated subframe in the front suspension. It'll be welded from 2 frames. I found the center and welded the first frame to the frame. The fixators of the silent blocks will be welded to it in place, and then the lever itself. The lower limiter of the lever is a frame. The rubber stops can be screwed in this place. Now we need to weld the lever and mount it in its place in order the swivel member can be screwed to it. The swivel member will be used from Chevrolet Neva. For correct work, it's necessary to install a drive in it, specifically a spline part that tightens the tapered bearings. The swivel joints are placed too widely on this member, which causes lack of space for the lever's free operation. For everything to work correctly, we need to shorten the swivel joint fastening. I got an idea: simply to swing the swivel joint fastening around. Now the upper lever has a free operation and it won't hit the frame. For the upper lever, there'll be welded the second frame through the spacers. I set the wheel to level and cut off the lever of the needed length. After that, we can weld the upper fixators and the upper levers can be welded to them. Time to weld everything. We need to make the suspension to be able to rise, otherwise the ramp won't go further than the workshop and get with a splitter in the first hole. We'll use pneumo cylinders for this. As you could notice, these cylinders are from Cybertruck. We'll order other air springs for it. The retaining assembly will be exactly the same. The upper stop for the air spring will be made of channel. The lever will also rest on it in the lowest working position. There's no compressor in this workshop so far. The air suspension was checked with an argon cylinder. Everything works. The lifting limiter is the buggy frame. If we remove this pipe, the ramp will lift even higher. But I think this height is more than enough. Then there goes the steering gear. The steering rack will also be used for Moskvich. It needs to be finished. Instead of the standard steering links, we'll use a pipe. For this purpose, a bracket was screwed to the rack. The rack will be located here. The pipe will be welded to the bracket, and such steering links will be welded on both sides of it. They'll be welded in spots so that the fluorine plastic won't suffer. There appeared another small problem. The steering arms abut on the levers, so we need to transfer them. The arm was welded through the spacer for additional checking. The tie rod fitted from Moskvich, it only needs to be shortened a bit. I was head over heels in work and completely forgot about the corners of the suspension. The same problem was with Buggy from PUBG. While lifting and lowering, the wheels are moving by themselves. This can be solved simply by moving the steering rack between the suspension levers. The main thing is that the suspension joints should be on the same line. After a successful check, we can finally weld the steering arms. Here's another snag. Only after all checks we realized that the wheels were spinning in the other direction, the steering wheel to the right and the wheels to the left. As it turned out, Moskvich's steering rail was placed in front, and we installed it in the back. This led to the rack replacement. Fortunately, the neighbors from the car workshop nearby gave us a good steering rack. It nicely fits the length of the pipe. For this rack, we only need to refine the steering links and weld the appropriate thread for the rack to them. The rail was also placed between the frames. Now the direction is correct and corresponds to the turn of the steering shaft. The steering tube was temporarily welded onto the dashboard tube. The steering shaft was elongated by pipe. We can fix the steering wheel and check the control. We can even drive a bit in the workshop. The suspension is assembled, everything spins, rides and turns. Now our buggy needs its wheels. The front suspension will be filled with the wide wheels. The disc width should be measured off in place. The outer rim should match the width of the frame. For this purpose we need to make an insert about 10 centimeters long. The wheel will be assembled with the inlet tube. The wheels fitted perfectly, nothing rubs and don't hit. Now to the rear wheels. The lever construction doesn't let the rear disc to get in its place. We need to swing the disc center around. After the reversal, the disc was aligned and welded. It wasn't so easy to do since the discs turned out to be initially curved, so they had to be rolled, but it's only after the center is turned. The ramp buggy should have a good hold, so it'll need the double wheels. Another disc will be welded to the modified one. What about the distance between the wheels, friction, wear and heat? I'll explain. This is not a truck, and it won't carry tons of sand, the load will be minimal. And if even someday something will happen, that'll be in a couple of thousand kilometers, and I don't think this car will reach such mileage for the entire service life. Still, if it will happen, I'm ready to install another used tire set. It can be taken almost in vain in such condition. The central part of the second disc was cut off in order to get to the fastening bolts. As a result, we got such wide disc. I put the first tire easily, but there appeared some difficulties with the second ones. I bent all the tire levers, but it didn't want to fit the rim. And that's because after the welding, the disc recess turned out to be on the other side. I had to peel everything off and unfold the second disc. It turns out the same construction, but now the rim lip is inside the disc. Of course, it's possible to cut the center of the second disc and weld a pair of spacers, but this will be another time. Now we need to install the wheels in their place and look at almost finished appearance of our ramp buggy. This series is already breaking the endurance record. A lot of work has been done in this part. If you like it, put your thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if not yet. See you in the next part dedicated to the engine installation and first meters of ride in this buggy.